What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. So I'm actually at the CDL Championship in Los Angeles right now. That's why my webcam looks a little bit different, and my mic probably sounds a little bit different. I'm in a hotel right now on my laptop with a mobile setup, but I'm still doing some content. So I wanted to cover the patch changes that just came out today on 8/20. This came out about 3 p.m. Pacific time. There were some weapon changes as well as some perk changes. I'm not actually going to cover the perk change today. They say that the high alert perk now will make it so you can hear people using dead silence. I'm not actually going to test that today. I'm only going to talk about weapon changes, but I will hopefully cover that in a future video. So as far as weapon changes go, if we go to this next page, these are the patch notes they tweeted out. So C58 recoil was increased. I'll have some good tests for you there. Damage range was decreased by 7.4%. Something interesting to talk about on that. ADS speed was decreased by 3.4%, and bullet velocity decreased by 8.1%. So nerf the C58 a little bit. But interestingly, we'll talk about the damage range. I still think it's in a great spot. It's not like a devastating nerf. It's still a great gun. EM2 was also changed a little bit. They reduced the base optic ADS speed penalty by 21%. So basically, that base like 3x optic that's very similar in zoom to the Axial Arms 3x is going to have much better ADS times now than it used to. So we will talk about that number. I've measured that. Again, I pulled this from measurements on my laptop, which was about 120 FPS, so it's not my normal 240 FPS accuracy, but I did multiple tests and kind of like found an average there and saw where the value was. So it should be very accurate within, plus or minus 4 milliseconds probably, even though it's on 120 FPS instead of 240 FPS. They also reduced the upper torso multiplier of the EM2 from 1.1 down to 1, so it got a little damage nerf as well. The Krig got this minimum damage range decrease from minimum damage decreased from 26 to 25, not damage range, just damage value. We will cover all of the damage changes there as well, and the damage range was decreased by 7.2%. So we'll go through all of this, and I'll talk about how it affects the meta and what I think is currently the long range AR meta, because this balance patch was all focused on main long range ARs to be paired with an SMG. So we'll talk about all that as we get into it. As always, if you guys like the content, consider dropping a sub, like, and comment. It helps us keep growing and keep doing the YouTube videos and keep the website up to date, just because it allows us to, have an income. This is a business, so we have to have an income. So we'll keep doing as much as we can for the website if you guys help us out with likes, comments, and subs. But first, we have to go through a Skillshare sponsorship. So this video is sponsored by Skillshare. Super excited to be working with them. I love their website. So we'll go through that, and then we'll jump into the actual changes for the weapons. Today's video is sponsored by Skillshare. This is Skillshare.com in the background. Skillshare is basically an online learning community that's dedicated to teaching you about anything you could possibly dream of learning about. So if you just browse the different categories they have, there's all kinds of different art topics: fine art, graphic design, illustration, music, photography. They have business classes on analytics and management marketing. They have lifestyle classes, productivity classes. They have programming classes. There's just literally anything you could ever want to learn about on here. I want to highlight UI UX design today because that's something that's important for TrueGameData, obviously, because we have a website. We need good user interface, good user experience. Basically, user experience design is all about making a website intuitive to use for any type of different person, any age group, any different demographic. You just want your website to be very simple and easy to use, and that's what UI UX design is all about. We have a UI UX designer at TrueGameData. It's just me and Christina. She's the other person I work with. This is stuff she's really passionate about, so she works really hard to make the website as simple and easy to use and efficient as possible. And on Skillshare, they have just hundreds of different classes you could take on here to learn about that if that sounds interesting to you, as well as all the different categories I outlined before. So if you're interested in using their website, the first 1,000 people to use my special link down in the video description below will get a free 1-month trial of Skillshare Premium. So be sure to check them out. It's a great website, great place to learn about anything you could possibly think of. And thank you, Skillshare, for supporting the website, supporting the YouTube channel, and sponsoring this video. All right, the most important thing from the patch notes, I would say, was the recoil change to the C58. So I want to start with that. Basically, recoil is king at range, so even if you have a fantastic TTK, if you can't land a single bullet, of course, your effective TTK is going to be horrible. So that's going to make the gun awful. So I wanted to check the recoil changes to the C58 first. Thankfully, I had meta builds from my EM2 video from a few days ago, where I had tested it against the C58 because I feel like very similar guns to me. Basically, this is what I've got here. So on the right side, that is the C58 and the EM2. So the EM2 is the blue lines from top to bottom, and then the C58 pre-patch before today's patch is the red lines top to bottom. And then on the left side of the image, you can see today's values with the exact same builds. So the C58, I measured this out with the actual pixel counts. Came out to about 10% more recoil. It's still less recoil than the EM2. And again, this is with the 40 round mag on the EM2 and the 45 round mag on the C58. So the amount of damage output in these two recoil plots is very similar, which I think is the most important way to compare recoil plots. You can't say, oh, this gun shoots 30 bullets, but it shoots half as fast as this gun that shoots 30 bullets. So obviously the one that shoots slower puts out way more damage. It's much more important to talk about the total damage output for the recoil plot, and these are very similar. So the EM2 still has more recoil than C58. I just wanted to highlight these changes. I still think the C58 recoil is great. It's very consistent, just a slight little curve at the start, and then it's very straight up and to the left. EM2, exactly the same, no changes there. It's just kind of a little curvy as it goes up, but it's very straight, very easy to control. It just has lots of vertical recoil. Alright, so the C58 was also nerfed in terms of ADS time and bullet velocity, but they were very, very small nerfs. Basically, the trend with this change to the C58 was basically just taking it from being pretty much the best gun and making it kind of in line with the other top guns. It's still a top gun in my opinion. So you can see I've got on the website the C58 and C58 pre-nerf already. I've tested all this and gotten it up on the website. So you can see the pre-nerf value of ADS time was 292. Now it's at a little over 300 milliseconds, so hardly any difference there. Again, they're just trying to bring it in line with the other top ARs. Bullet velocity, it was about 630 before, and now it's down about 575. Again, this is a very, very small change. Just going to make you miss a couple more shots out of a huge pool of shots, so it's not a huge change, just a slight change to kind of bring it in line with the other ARs. So in the patch notes, they also listed a change to the EM2, and they said they reduced the ADS time of the default optic by about 21%. So this is something that I wasn't sure what that meant. I had to actually go test it for sure. I mean, I tested everything, but I just wanted to double check this because I don't know if they actually kind of equip an optic when they build the gun, when it has a weird optic instead of iron sights, and it appears that that's what they do. So the optic that's on the EM2 added about 100 milliseconds of time from what the iron sight ADS would have been, and we can tell that based on what the red dot sights were. So when they reduced that by 21%, it only took it down by 30 milliseconds or so. So it went from 408 milliseconds pre-buff to 375 with that default optic, but still, even with that change, you're still not going to want to use that optic pretty much. You're mostly going to want to stick with the Axial 3X, just because if we go look at the current EM2 on my website, and then we look at the optics, you can see the Axial 3X is still going to reduce by 45 milliseconds. Now, it does bring an interesting question into debate whether or not it's better to use the Axial 3X and use that perk slot or that attachment slot on an optic, or if you should use a rear grip like the airborne elastic to bring that ADS time down. So I'm going to need to investigate that a little more and get really precise numbers for how these ADS times stack and see if there's anything weird going on there right now. But for now, I would say it's still better to use the Axial 3X on the EM2 instead of the default optic. So another quick note on the EM2 changes. Basically, it was nerfed overall with the damage profile changes. So they removed the chest multiplier completely. So no longer do you get that really good chest TTK. I've talked about this a lot in the past, but I don't like the direction they're going with that. I liked having guns that were really good with chest multipliers because I felt like it gave accurate players something more advantageous to use over like a 5.56 damage profile gun like the the M4A1 or the Ram 7, something like that has the same damage profile for chest, stomach, and legs. I'm kind of annoyed that they're removing all these chest multipliers just because I liked that, again, it gave good players something to aim for and really good potential TGKs based on the situation. I don't really know what their logic is there, but you can see here on the chart, EM2, the current EM2 is orange, and the pre-nerf EM2, so before today, it was pink. These are chest shots specifically. This is the only way I could show the changes. So you can see the TTK for chest shots dramatically got worse. It went from 556 to 675, so more than 100 milliseconds slower TTK on chest shots. Again, it's not always going to matter. You weren't always getting that chest shot TTK anyway, but if you mixed in some headshots and things like that, occasionally you probably were getting this chest shot TTK in that first damage range. You're no longer getting that, so it doesn't actually change the TTK out in the second damage range, but it does reduce the actual DPS. So again, in team fire situations, it's going to be slightly worse than it was before. I don't really like this nerf. I feel like it was in an okay spot before. It was really hard to control, had a lot of recoil, but it was very fast to kill. So I liked where it was before, where it kind of fit in the meta. Not very many people used it because it was really hard to use, hard to control. But it had those great TTKs, and now it doesn't really even have those great TTKs. So I kind of see the EM2 moving out of the meta a little bit with this change, more so than it was before even. And like I said, most people were sticking with the Krig, the QBZ, or the C58 before. So this kind of pushes the EM2 even further from that, just because of the damage profile changes. All right, so as far as Krig changes are concerned, so Krig was one of the top long-range ARs before just because it had such good recoil. So there were no recoil changes, but in the second damage drop-off, they reduced the damage values by 1 across the board. So you can see current Krig 6 on the left and then pre-nerf Krig 6 on the right. Went from 37, 27, 25, 25 to 38, 28, 26, 26. The only shot location that this actually affects your TTK is the chest. It takes 1 more bullet to kill on chest shots now. Obviously your DPS is slightly lower because your damage is 1 lower on everything. They also reduced the damage range by 2 meters, so it went from 36 meters down to 34 meters. If you look at TTK charts, again, the only place you're going to see this is on chest shots specifically. So this is 1 extra shot to kill out at range for the orange Krig, which is the current Krig. But if you use my shot location percentage calculator, this is that same thing I've been using for the last few videos, where this is 11% headshots, 35% chest shots, something like 11% stomach shots, and then like 40% extremity shots. Again, I've talked about that in previous videos. If you're curious about that, you can go check those out. But basically, those are shot location percentages pulled from the average user in Black Ops Cold War. Super consistent for ARs, within plus or minus 5%. So I think it's a fair measurement to use for Warzone, even though there's different TTKs and different damage ranges and different engagement ranges in Warzone. I still feel like it's okay to use those numbers. And you can see here, it doesn't affect that TTK using those percentages. So again, you're only going to feel this occasionally. The Krig is still going to be very good. They're just trying to nerf it a little bit, bring it more in line with the other ARs. I think this is a good change. I also think the EM2 and the C58 changes were good just because it kind of brings the top ARs all kind of into line. We're going to talk about that in a second, but it's just a good change overall. It brings most of the ARs into a good spot for comparison between each other. All right, so I just want to have a general summary discussion of how these 3 changes to the EM2, C58, and the Krig affect the meta. So I've got all the top ARs for mid-range and long-range up on the TTK chart right now. This is just chest shots. I'm just going to focus on individual shot locations for this part of the video. So we got EM2 orange, magenta, C58, cyan, Farah, green, Krig, dark blue, mid blue, whatever color you want to call that, QBZ, and then a lighter pink color is the XM4. So if we actually look at this chart, this is, again, chest shots specifically. So in the first damage range, the top 2 would be the QBZ and the Farah if you're hitting chest shots only. In the longer damage range, so out past like 35 meters, which is where you're mostly going to be using these weapons, the top 3 would be the EM2, the Farah, and the QBZ, followed by the XM4, the C58, and then in last place is the Krig. Krig got this nerf to the Krig that increased the chest shot TTK by quite a bit, makes it the worst in terms of chest shot TTKs. But again, if we look at extremities, it's going to completely change. So it's really important to consider both of these. So on extremities, we see the Farah in first place by a pretty significant margin in the first damage range, about 50 milliseconds, 40 milliseconds faster than everything else in the first 35 meters, 30 meters. And then that's going to be followed by the C58 and the XM4. And the EM2 are all really close in that first damage range, and then followed by QBZ and Krig. So this change made the Krig worse in chest shots than the QBZ, but better than the QBZ in extremity shots and stomach shots. So it kind of brings the Krig very much in line with the QBZ. And now that they have fixed the QBZ 60-round fast mag, I think this kind of balances those 2 guns really well. I think they're in a good spot. They're kind of the more accurate, but less good in terms of TTK weapons of the bunch, so I think that's a good change overall. They're doing a good job there. And then in the second damage range, we have the EM2 and the Farah being the fastest time to kill, and then the XM4 is pink, and the C58 is magenta. So those are the next up, and then followed by the Krig, followed by the QBZ. So in terms of TTK, the best weapons for TTK out at range, we're definitely looking at the Farah being pretty much the best now. The EM2 is also going to be very good out at range. The problem is it's just hard to hit your shots. And I like that this is the case because I think the Krig and the QBZ are very easy to hit your shots, but they have worse TTKs, whereas the Farah and the EM2 have, harder to control recoil, but they have better TTKs, and that's how it should be balanced. And then in the middle, we have the C58 and the XM4. Again, I feel like that's perfect. I feel like the C58 and the XM4 are middle in terms of how hard they are to control. I feel like the QBZ and the Krig are easier to control than the C58 now after these recoil changes, but the C58 and the XM4 have better TTKs than the Krig and the QBZ. So I feel like overall these changes were really good. Actually, I think the long range meta is in a very good spot. I think you can literally use any of these 6 guns. I think you should try all of them, see which one feels the best to you, and go with that. I personally, I have a hard time using the Farah. I have a hard time using the EM2. I have a hard time using the C58. I'm going to try the XM4 again. I loved the XM4 back in the day when it had really good TTKs. They nerfed it a little bit, but now it fits in right in the middle of the pack in terms of TTKs. So I'm going to go back and try out the XM4 again and see if that feels good to me. All right, I think that pretty much covers all the weapon changes for this patch. I just wanted to go over the changes. I measured all of this in game to make sure everything was correct from the patch notes, so we're good to go there. The website's fully updated. Anything that doesn't have, parentheses pre-buff or pre-nerf is the current value for the weapon. So you can go play with these yourselves and do different builds. Overall, I like the changes. I think they're moving in a good direction. I think the C58 was a little bit too good before, so I like to see them bring it in line a little bit with these changes. Overall, good patch, good changes. Again, I'm not covering the Dead Silence changes with High Alert perk. I'll do that in a future video, but I just want to get the weapon changes out to you guys so you can see what's going on. Thanks again, Skillshare, for supporting the website, supporting the YouTube channel, and sponsoring this video. As always, if you guys like the content, drop a sub, a like, a comment. It really helps us out. Helps us keep doing this. So thank you guys, as always, and I will see you in the next video.